My name was Annalise Hayworth, and I was dead. The bad news was, I had drowned in Puget Sound during the midnight high tide. No one saw the waves drag me under. The good news was, the Grim Reaper gave me a chance to bury myself properly within a week. I plan to leave this task to my husband, Theodore Godfrey. Luck was a mysterious thing when I was at my lowest. Even watching the tide roll in was enough to get me killed 0.8 hours after I died. I carried my own corpse home. That was when I ran straight into Theodore, fresh from another woman's bed, a smudge of lipstick staining his collar. He stepped out of the car, his tailored suit hugging his frame, highlighting his broad shoulders and a narrow waist, making him impossibly handsome. Wealth and privilege had wrapped him in luxury since birth, gifting him a charm that made women fall for him even past 30. He stared at me coldly and snapped, "Annalise, what are you carrying? As my wife, how can you look like a hobo rummaging through trash?" My heart lurched, but years of mutual hatred made me shoot back on instinct. "Oh? I thought you'd forgotten you were married, considering you were parading your new girl around yesterday." Theodore shot me an icy glance. "It kind of surprises me that you didn't make a scene this time." I stared at him quietly with a smile, my heart shattering. Actually, I'd tried. His scandal had popped up on my phone while I was walking along Puget Sound. Mr. Godfrey spends hundreds of thousands on his new lover. Mr. Godfrey openly cheats on his wife. Mr. Godfrey spends a wild night with a hottie. It wasn't the first time Theodore had cheated, but it was our 5th anniversary, and I couldn't stay composed. I dialed his number over and over, not noticing the massive wave surging behind me. By the time I realized it, the water had already swallowed me. Snapping back to reality, I scoffed. "Theodore, if you've forgotten you're married, how about I play the wedding video for you? Let's see how you swore through tears that you'd never betray me." Theodore curled his thin lips into a cold smile. "Sure, play it. I could use a reminder of how tender and gentle you used to be." He turned and walked inside, as if he genuinely intended to find that wedding tape. I pressed my lips together and silently dragged the body bag after him. Thankfully, a month ago, I had fallen seriously ill, and my weight had dropped below 40 kilos. Otherwise, I never could have carried myself. I was about to head upstairs when Cohen Garrett, the butler, hurried over. He had served the Godfrey family for nearly 50 years. Even a hothead like Theodore treated him with the utmost respect. Cohen called out in a robust voice, "Someone, come help Mrs. Godfrey carry this upstairs." Startled, I quickly waved my hand. "I've got it, thanks." Cohen didn't insist. Watching Theodore rummaging under the TV cabinet, he added, "Mr. Godfrey specially ordered the hazelnut cake you liked yesterday, along with several pieces of jewelry. The cake's still fresh, and I put the jewels in your jewelry box. Would you like to try them on later?" In front of the TV, Theodore heard him and turned toward me, his face weary. 5 years of marriage, and you nag about the anniversary every year. I'll celebrate it this time. Don't fuss over it again. A lump rose in my throat. How ironic. I had waited for this for so long, only for it to be fulfilled after I was dead. I didn't answer. I just slung the body bag over my shoulder and went upstairs, setting it in the empty wardrobe. Theodore and I had slept in separate rooms for nearly 2 years. He'd never stepped foot in here. Besides, the Grim Reaper said the bag would keep the body from smelling for a whole week. After stowing the body, I went back down. Theodore had opened the cake box, his face grim. Curious, I walked over and saw a line written in chocolate sauce across the white cream. "Happy 1st anniversary, Theodore and Madison." My mind went blank. Madison Pavley, an Emmy Award-winning actress, was the woman who had trended with Theodore last night, and the longest standing of all his mistresses. Theodore pulled out his phone to make a call, his tone unpleasant. "Who picked up the cake I ordered? Ronald Prescott? Fine. Tell him to go to the finance department and collect his pay today. He's fired." Watching him seethe, I tugged gently at his sleeve. "Let it go, just wipe the words off." "It won't matter." Theodore froze, phone still in his hand. Confusion flickered across his eyes. "Annalise, since when have you become so forgiving?" I forced a bitter smile. "If nothing goes wrong, I'll always be this forgiving from now on." Maybe death brought clarity. I couldn't even find the energy to be angry at his neglect anymore. Theodore frowned and spoke into the phone, cut Ronald's bonus for the month. He hung up, twirling the phone in his hand. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Do you have any wishes? I'll fulfill them to make up for this." My fingers trembled. Surprise came first, followed by an overwhelming sense of relief. After all, the Grim Reaper himself had given me a second chance. It wasn't so strange that fate would make Theodore fulfill my last wish. "I want to go to Colorado with you. Just the two of us." "You'll drive," I replied. "I'd take my corpse with us." And then I wanted Theodore to bring me to the place where I would be laid to rest in a natural burial. When he heard my request, Theodore frowned and asked, "How long will it take?" I gave a faint smile. "No more than a week, probably." Theodore pulled out his phone and tapped it twice. A reminder popped up on the screen. November 17th, take Maddie to the musical. My eyes stung. It's the 4th now. The 17th is over 10 days away. Plenty of time for a trip. Theodore paused, slipped his phone back into his pocket, and nodded. "Fine. We'll set off first thing tomorrow. For a road trip, we'll take the Land Cruiser from the garage. Cohen, have someone fill it up with gas." After giving instructions, he looked at me. "Pack your luggage tonight, so I don't have to wait for you tomorrow." Somehow, memories of the past hit me. Theodore never used to talk to me like this. He would wait patiently outside the school for me to dawdle out, then help me lift my suitcase into the car. He'd only say things like, "My dear, I've waited 2 hours for you." Is a kiss too much to ask for a punishment? Memories flooded in, wrapping around me, leaving me stuck. I mumbled a reply and started for the stairs, but Theodore called after me, "Wait. Have some cake, so you can't say I never celebrated our anniversary with you later." With an impatient expression, he scooped a piece of cake with a spoon and held it in front of me, but he didn't know that since my return from death, I couldn't smell or taste anything, nor feel heat or cold. Still, I opened my mouth and took the cake. Aside from a sticky texture, I tasted nothing. Luckily, Theodore didn't ask any questions. He dropped the spoon and grabbed his coat, heading for the door. "I'm leaving. I have plans tonight. Won't be back." Maybe the cake had glued my mouth shut. Watching his unapologetic retreating figure, I couldn't say a single word. I couldn't taste anything anymore, but a bitter feeling washed over me all the same. When I came to my senses and was about to go upstairs, I noticed Cohen standing beside me at some point. He sighed, his voice soft and warm. "Mrs. Godfrey, Mr. Godfrey still cares about you. You know that. About what happened back then, you two should talk and clear the air." The 2 words back then made my heart clench, but this time, I didn't avoid them like I used to. Instead, I gave a serious nod. "All right. I'll do as you say." Maybe dying had changed me. There were things I wanted to clarify with Theodore. I turned and went upstairs. Looking at the bedroom devoid of any trace of Theodore, I felt dazed. I walked to the couch at the foot of the bed and sat down, casually picking up a throw pillow. The dead don't need to sleep. I had plenty of time to reminisce about my past with Theodore. When my family's company went bankrupt, Theodore avoided me for 3 whole months. When I lost our first child, paparazzi caught Theodore cheating. When I first tried to get a divorce, Theodore ground his teeth and said, "Annalise, you want a divorce?" Over my dead body. Thinking carefully, it seemed that ever since he chose to avoid me for 3 months without explanation, our relationship had shattered. After that, we just endured each other, not loving enough to stay together, nor hating enough to walk away. I leaned back against the couch and let out a long, heavy breath. "Theodore, I'll be free soon, and so will you." I sat there all night. At the first light of dawn, I packed a few windbreakers and jackets. I couldn't feel the cold anyway. I didn't need to pretend and pack a bunch of useless stuff. While the servants were still asleep, I put the corpse and my luggage into the car's trunk. Theodore never paid attention to small details. Probably, he'd never noticed the extra luggage. Even if he did, he wouldn't question it. After finishing all this, I sat in the living room, repeatedly looking at the place I had lived in for 5 years. I thought I'd feel sad to leave. But when the moment came, all I felt was relief. At 8 in the morning, Theodore appeared at home on time. He was carrying a suitcase, huge, bright red, not really his style. Seeing me look at the suitcase, Theodore smiled and explained, "All my things are at Maddie's place. I just had her pack for me." After a brief moment of silence, a smile tugged at my lips. "It's a practical bag. She has good taste." Under Theodore's suddenly chilling gaze, I got up, got into the car, and sat in the passenger seat. "Let's go. We need to reach Colorado within 4 days." I chose the direct route on Interstate I-90 the whole way, over 3,000 kilometers. Theodore looked surprised when he saw the navigation map I downloaded. The Pacific Coast Highway or the detour through Yellowstone National Park via Route 89 are both great options. Why pick this boring route? I stared out the window, speaking casually. "We only have a week. This route gets us there the fastest." Theodore fell silent. Around more than 10 minutes later, he spoke again. "If you want to stay in Colorado longer, I can make the time." I glanced back at him. He was staring at the road ahead, his handsome profile carrying its usual casual air. I didn't take his words seriously. "No need. This is fine." Even if he meant it, I couldn't wait. I had less than a week left. After a week, I'd return to dust and earth, leaving nothing behind. Theodore looked surprised. "Annalise, since when have you become so reasonable? It's not like you." His words caught me off guard. I asked without thinking, "What do you think I'm like then?" Theodore answered without hesitation. "Annoying, clingy, dramatic." I froze again. Once Theodore started talking, he couldn't stop. "When we first started dating, all my friends said I'd found myself a demanding princess. Once, in the middle of winter, I was still in bed, and you called, saying you had period cramps, insisting I buy you painkillers. I was so panicked. I ran out without even changing out of my pajamas. When I got to your place and opened the door, you were already asleep, and another time on your birthday, because the cake shop made a cake that didn't suit your taste, and you said I didn't care about you. Said I didn't even know you hated strawberries. You even threw the gift I gave you into the lake. I spent so long picking that gift. I was so mad I almost walked away. But when I saw your red eyes, my heart softened. I stayed and celebrated your birthday with you anyway." Listening to his complaints, I felt somewhat dazed. That time my stomach hurt was because I had always been in poor health, and every period felt like torture. It was Theodore who told me to tell him when I was in pain, so he could buy me painkillers. I fell asleep because the pain was so bad that I passed out. As for the birthday, I'd told him days in advance I wanted a mango cake. Yet what I got was a strawberry cake. And the gift I threw away in a fit of anger. I spent an entire night fishing it out of the lake. I opened my mouth to explain, then realized it was pointless. So I went along with his words and asked, "If you were so displeased, why didn't you break up with me?" Maybe it was the driving, but Theodore's brain wasn't as sharp as usual. He blurted out, "Because I loved you, of course." The second the words left his mouth, the car fell deathly silent. I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard that word love from Theodore. I only remembered that every time I threatened to break up in the past, he would plead, "Annalise, where will you find someone who loves you as much as I do?" At our wedding, I hadn't even cried yet, but Theodore's tears were falling hard. "Annalise, I promise I'll love only you for the rest of my life. Always and forever." And then later. I closed my eyes, unwilling to think further. Theodore looked annoyed at his slip of the tongue. He didn't say another word for the rest of the drive. The skyscrapers of New York fell away behind us, while the flat, open land stretched into the distance as evening settled. Theodore slowed the car down and finally spoke. "I'm tired. You drive for a while." I nodded. "Sure. You find a place to stay tonight then." For a privileged man like Theodore, I was afraid any place I picked wouldn't be good enough, so I left it to him. Theodore didn't question it. We pulled into a rest stop and switched seats. Theodore stretched his limbs. Getting into the passenger seat, he let out a small sound of surprise. "Annalise, you've been sitting here almost all day. Why is the seat still cold?" My heart skipped a beat. I said casually, "Probably because it's getting late and we're on the plateau. The temperature is too low." Theodore didn't dwell on it. He simply turned on the seat heater. "All right, I'll sleep a bit. If you get tired, call me." I nodded, tapping the playlist on the car stereo. If I weren't scared of terrifying Theodore, I could drive straight to Colorado without stopping. A ghost like me didn't need sleep. The signal was spotty on the plateau. The car system took almost 2 minutes to load. Then music started playing softly, and I thought that it would kill me, but it didn't. And it was so nice, so peaceful and quiet. I forgot that you existed. I glanced at Theodore, fast asleep the second his eyes closed, worn out. I turned the volume down a little, but it wasn't long before Theodore's phone rang. It wasn't the familiar iPhone ringtone. My heart clenched. I knew it must be the special ringtone he'd set for Madison. Before I could think any further, Theodore groggily answered the phone without a second thought. "Hey, sweetie." The next second, his eyes flew open suddenly. "What happened to our babe?" Theodore and Madison had a kid. My eyelid twitched hard. My foot pressed down on the gas, and the car lurched forward abruptly. Theodore jolted, his phone slipping under the seat. He stared at me, his voice turning cold. "Annalise, now's not the time for you to throw a tantrum." I pressed my lips together, flustered. But he bent down to pick up the phone, his tone soft as he comforted the person on the other end. "Don't panic. I'm sending a doctor over right now. Molly will be fine." I listened, stealing glances at him as he deftly dialed another number. "Dr. Dawson, Molly isn't feeling well. Can you go to Foothills Heights right now to check on her? I'll cover all the fees. Call me back if anything happens." I took a deep breath and silently slowed the car back to a normal speed. I watched his fingers tap the screen impatiently, the sound grating on my nerves. I spoke flatly. "We haven't gone far. You can go back. The kid's more important." There was no need to delay a child's treatment for a ghost like me. Once Theodore left, I could drive straight to Colorado without stopping, watch the sunrise over the mountains by myself, and then calmly embrace death. The thought improved my mood slightly. But Theodore waved a hand dismissively. "I know what's important. I wouldn't stand you up for a pet." My grip on the steering wheel tightened. I spoke dazedly. "A pet?" Theodore responded, "Yeah. What did you think? That Madison and I have a child." I was instantly embarrassed, but the tightness in my chest melted away. Theodore stared at me for a long moment, then spoke suddenly. "Annalise, I'd never have a kid with anyone else. Illegitimate kids have inheritance rights now." But it still doesn't look good. And it wouldn't do anyone any good. I had no idea why he was saying this. I didn't dare look at him. I just stared at the dark road lit up by our headlights, yet this sudden event still sent ripples through my heart. Once, Theodore and I had a fluffy golden retriever. It was our first year together. My mom was allergic to dog hair, so even though I loved dogs, I never thought about getting one. I'd just go to dog cafes on my days off. Even after getting together with Theodore, this habit didn't change. He once asked me, "Annalise, you love dogs so much. Why not get one?" I told him why. Then one sunny weekend, Theodore showed up at my door, holding a tiny, round-faced puppy in his arms. He wore a black trench coat and jeans that day. The puppy whimpered softly in his arms. Theodore held the puppy up to me, the sun gilding his whole figure in a soft golden glow. He said, "Annalise, you don't have to pet other people's dogs anymore. Just tell me what you wish for, and I'll make it happen for you." In that moment, I didn't know if it was because the puppy was too cute or his smile was too bright, but that scene moved me, making my nose sting and my eyes redden. We named the dog Summer later, hoping it'd be as vibrant and brilliant as summer. Then my family's company went bankrupt, and Theodore and I grew apart. One day, Summer slipped away when we weren't looking. It never came back. This thought. My nose stung slightly, but then Theodore spoke plainly. "I found a hotel. We'll get off the interstate in about 300 kilometers. I nodded. For the rest of the drive, the only sounds were Theodore's fingers tapping his phone. Occasionally, I could hear Madison's voice messages. The vet said Molly's just hungry. I'll feed her no food or water today. She can eat tomorrow morning. It's all your fault. If you'd brought her to the set to see me more, she wouldn't be so distant from me. Theodore, I miss you so much." Every word carried an intimacy and familiarity, much like how I used to shamelessly flirt with Theodore. I couldn't help but glance at him. The soft smile on his face stung my eyes. I looked away and silently increased the car's speed. The night grew darker. The highway stretched out, dark both ahead and behind. It felt like our car was the only thing left in the world. Theodore stared out the window board. When we were less than 100 kilometers from the hotel, he spoke suddenly. Annalise, just sitting here is boring. Let's play a game. What game? Truth or dare? I froze. After a long while, I managed to speak with difficulty. What do you want to ask? Theodore straightened up, leaning a bit closer to me, his voice full of anticipation. When are you planning to divorce me? The faint scent of cedarwood lingered around me, but I felt cold all over. I'd never thought Theodore would bring up divorce so casually. His question cut me deep. But I refused to back down, my voice cold. Theodore, who is it that said I could only get a divorce over your dead body? Theodore chuckled lazily. Annalise, don't bring up the past. Just answer my question. In my memory, he had only been this persistent in demanding an answer from me once before. Back then, he'd asked, when will you finally agree to marry me? Now he was desperate to know when I'd agree to a divorce. The thought made a bitter smile tug at my lips. If Theodore had asked me this when I was still alive, I would have told him coldly, you said no when I wanted a divorce. Now that you want one, why should I let you have your way? But now I told him firmly, when we get back from Colorado. I am destined to vanish in Colorado, and our marriage is destined to end. I glanced at Theodore from the corner of my eye, only to see his expression gloomy, seemingly dissatisfied. I looked away, focusing on the road. As a living dead person, I didn't have the energy to figure out why he was mad again. After a long while, Theodore's voice finally sounded beside me. All right, your turn to ask. For some reason, his voice sounded a little tense when he said it. I inwardly laughed at myself for overthinking and began considering my question. Following his lead, a dozen questions popped into my head. I wanted to know why he'd run away instead of explaining himself back then, and why he liked Madison. I also wondered if he'd ever thought about saving our marriage in these past 3 years. Yet the next second, a very clear voice in my head told me that asking more was pointless. So I asked. Simply, is what you and Madison are raising a dog? What's its name? Annalise, that's your question? I nodded. Yeah. Asking anything else is pointless. In the silence, I heard Theodore's answer, gritted out through his teeth. Molly, a dog so much smarter than Summer. Not stupid enough to run away and never find her way home. His voice drowned out the car music, sharp and clear, stinging my heart with every word. This was Theodore, all right. When he wanted to hurt me, he knew exactly where to strike. I took a deep breath, engaged the adaptive cruise control, then turned to look at Theodore. I suppose my expression must have been unpleasant, because Theodore, who was always so proud, showed such an uncharacteristically flustered look. I spoke coldly. I admit I wasn't watching Summer carefully that day. But you're the last person who gets to say a word about it. The second I realized Summer was gone, I called Theodore. But all he said was, Annalise, can you stop being so annoying? If the dog's lost, go find it yourself. If you can't, you might as well not come back either. Theodore probably remembered this too. After a moment of silence, he spoke with difficulty. I was drunk. I turned back to the road. If you're asking when I gave up on you, it was that day, that exact moment. Dead silence filled the car. My emotions settled into calm amidst this quiet. The navigation announced it was time to get off the interstate. We drove a little further after getting off. Then the car pulled up in front of the hotel. I parked the car. Theodore and I got out, grabbing our luggage and heading inside. Theodore had booked 2 adjacent suites, expensive as always. He never skimped on his own comfort. After checking in, we walked to our separate rooms. I reached my door when his hoarse voice called out from behind, Annalise. The day Summer ran away, I couldn't leave. But I had my assistant take a professional dog search team out to look for it. I paused, then pushed the door open, shutting all sound outside. After sitting dazedly on the sofa for a while, I took out my phone and opened a chat window. Sir, you can start preparing the burial ceremony now. In 4 days, the applicant's husband will bring her body to you. After sending the messages, I set my phone down and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. It was pitch black and silent outside. My mind wandered. I had nothing but time now that I didn't need to sleep. Right now, in this time I had all to myself, I thought back to when I first returned from death. I'd woken up by Puget Sound, my clothes dry. The black body bag beside me made the agony of drowning feel like nothing but a nightmare. But before I could feel any relief, that strange voice sounded in my ears. Annalise, you have 1 week to bury yourself properly. This body bag will keep your corpse intact and unspoiled. Remember, you have only 7 days. 7 days. I didn't have time to process it, only feeling the pressure of time closing in. But the moment I pictured my own burial, words popped into my head at once. Going to Colorado and letting the wilderness there claim me. I'd once watched a documentary. I remember a line from it, let the soul return to the divine in the place closest to heaven. We can only seize the moment. We can only live for today. Theodore had watched it with me. When he heard that line, he scoffed. Live for today? Annalise, don't buy it. What I want is an eternal, forever future with you. We were both young then, talking about death lightly. I'd asked him, what if I die before you? Theodore's thick brows had furrowed, but I'd been serious, so he'd forced himself to think about it. He'd said, if you really leave first, wait for me at the crossing. I'll settle everything here and come find you. Then we'll walk into the next life together. I'd loved his answer, grinning as I wrapped my arms around his lean waist. It's a deal then. You and I will love each other forever, never apart, life after life. When in love, sweet nothings were never enough. But the relationship between Theodore and me couldn't even last through this lifetime. I stared at my reflection, then pulled the curtains closed. I was about to climb into bed when a knock sounded at the door. I walked over and opened it to find Theodore standing there. He lifted his chin slightly. I asked the front desk. Their kitchen serves food 24/7. Want to go get something to eat? I thought for a moment and said yes, following him to the restaurant. Even though it was nearly 1 a.m, there were still quite a few people in the restaurant. We found a seat. After sitting down, Theodore opened the electronic menu on the table first. I watched him order quickly. Speaking up, it's late. You don't need to order too much. I'm not that hungry. Theodore responded, I know. I got you black coffee and a bison bacon burger. You hardly ate anything today. Don't want your stomach acting up. Also, hey, want to try the chocolate lava cake? You love this kind of sickly sweet stuff. Watching him know my preferences so well, I felt a lump in my throat. Not getting an answer, he looked up, puzzled. What's wrong? Yes or no? I nodded. Get one to try. Even if I couldn't taste it or feel hot and cold, I didn't want to ruin his mood. I sighed quietly. For the first time, I thought about how nice it would be if I were still alive. Soon, elegantly plated dishes arrived. I forced myself to chew and swallow, acting like I was savoring every bite. I smiled at Theodore, who'd been staring at me the whole time. It's really good. Theodore frowned. Aren't you allergic to peanuts? Why are you fine after eating that? My temple throbbed. I stared at the half peanut left on my plate, then popped it into my mouth casually. You must be mistaken. It's probably a local nut here. Definitely not a peanut. Theodore pressed his lips together, but he didn't ask any more questions. After we finished eating, we walked out of the restaurant one after the other. We just stepped outside when a group of young students swarmed over. Hi there. We're students from the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University. For our final project, we need to photograph 100 couples for material. Could you help us out? I glanced at Theodore, instinctively wanting to refuse, but saw him silently step to my side. Sure. But she's not my girlfriend. She's my soon-to-be ex-wife. Make sure you write that clearly. His words left the students stunned, their hands freezing on their cameras. Unsure what to do. I could only smile. It's fine. We're divorcing amicably. Go ahead and take the photo. It's getting late and cold. Okay, thank you both. After a series of flashes, Theodore and I walked toward the elevator amidst the students' thanks. Before stepping into the elevator, I glanced back on instinct. I saw those students at the restaurant door staring at their cameras in horror. What's going on? Why does the photo only show the gentleman? I froze when I heard those words. I reached for my phone on instinct to check if they were telling the truth, but Theodore nudged my arm suddenly. Theodore looked tired, speaking lazily. What are you standing there for? Get in the elevator. I'm a bit sleepy. He had always been like this, spoiled and self-centered, but I couldn't be bothered to argue now. I slipped my phone back in my pocket and stepped in. Theodore spoke suddenly. I checked the weather forecast. There's a high chance of rain tonight. If you're afraid of staying alone, you can come to my room. I booked a suite. I stared back at him and smiled. Theodore, I'm 28. I won't be frightened by the dark or thunder and end up crying in your arms. At 18, I was loved and cared for. At 28, after years of independence, I had long since learned to be strong. Theodore fell silent briefly before scoffing. Annalise, you really don't appreciate kindness. I didn't reply. The second the elevator doors opened, I walked straight back to my room. I closed the door, turned on the light, and pulled out my phone again, opening the front camera. I pointed it slowly at myself. The 18-megapixel camera captured every detail with perfect clarity, except for me. There was no trace of my image at all. My hand holding the phone suddenly turned cold. My heart sank heavily. I turned to look at my reflection in the mirror, forcing a faint smile. What a shame. I can see myself in the mirror, but I can't even leave behind a decent portrait for my own memorial. I'd originally planned to take a selfie when the sunrise washed the mountain peaks in gold. Even facing death, I still wanted my life to be frozen for a moment in that sacred, magnificent light. I sighed silently, closed the camera, and scrolled aimlessly. Finally, I tapped into Theodore's Instagram. His Instagram background was still the photo we took years ago on Sanibel Island. We'd been holding hands, throwing up a cheesy peace sign, grinning at the camera. Theodore was strange. Even though the women around him changed constantly and the media all knew he was a playboy, he had never changed his background photo. I thought it was just to humiliate me because right below it, his feed was filled with sweet moments with Madison. I'd blocked his Instagram after we fell apart, out of sight, out of mind. But I couldn't say how much of it was just running from the truth. This night was harder to endure than the last and felt even longer. Yet, even the longest night breaks at dawn. At 7 in the morning, I packed my bags and knocked on Theodore's door. The door opened 2 minutes later. Theodore's eyes were half closed, his whole body radiating irritation. Annalise, what's the rush? Can't you let me get a good night's sleep? It's not like I'd turn back halfway, even if a week isn't enough. You're always like this. You only care about your own convenience and don't give a damn about anyone else. A coldness settled in my heart. I thought Theodore was self-centered, but it turned out he thought the same of me. I kept my voice calm and explained, I'm sorry, but I really want to get to Colorado as soon as possible. Is that okay? I watched his irritation fade a little. He stepped aside and said, fine, come in and wait. I need to get ready. I carried my luggage in and sat down. Not long after, Theodore called out, Annalise, grab me a set of clothes for me from the suitcase. I bit back a sigh and dragged myself over. I froze when I opened the suitcase. Besides his essential clothes, the transparent compartment was lined with Madison's photos, neat and tidy. Her award photos, casual home shots, holding the puppy, she looked happy in every single one. The photos made my heart ache, a dull, sour pain. I stood there stunned. I didn't notice the water in the bathroom stop, or that Theodore had peeked out the door, watching me for a long time. Then he spoke leisurely. What are you looking at? I took all of these with the photography skills you taught me. I shifted my gaze, randomly grabbed some clothes, and threw them hard at him. Theodore, I know all about reaping what others sow. You don't have to rub it in. As I turned, I heard Theodore give a light laugh and say calmly, Annalise, you're jealous. The frustration in my chest intensified. I opened my mouth to snap at him, but then he said in a serious voice, Annie, when we get back from Colorado, let's find a time to talk properly. His sudden softened tone made my body freeze. After a long while, I finally lowered my eyes wearily, feeling my eyes welling up, and silently smiled. Yeah, all right, I responded. I didn't tell Theodore that it was impossible for me to return from Colorado, and that I was destined to break my promise to him. But it doesn't matter. Soon, he will know. The moment the car entered Denver, my heart tightened. According to the agreement with the Grim Reaper, The day after tomorrow is when I am supposed to leave. I had already arranged with Kendall Wright that the day after tomorrow, early in the morning, Theodore would deliver my body there. As for how to get Theodore to agree, I wasn't worried at all. Even though he no longer loves me, he wouldn't refuse me such a small request. Denver, Montview Garden Columbarium, the final destination of my life as Annalise, was now right before my eyes, very soon. Theodore and I completed the check-in procedures. Before entering the room, I couldn't help but call out to Theodore. Tomorrow morning at 6:30, let's go see the peaks bathed in golden sunlight. This time, Theodore didn't refuse. He simply said, "All right," and closed the door. After a night's rest, at 6:30 in the morning, I received a text from Theodore. "I'm waiting for you in the car." I picked up my phone, went downstairs, got in the car all in one smooth motion. After the car had driven for a while, Theodore suddenly spoke. "Annalise, after we see the peaks bathed in golden sunlight, our journey will come to an end. Don't you have anything you want to say to me?" I clenched my hands, thought of the decision I made before leaving, and finally spoke slowly. "Theodore, from the moment my family went bankrupt until now, have you ever regretted it?" The veins on the back of Theodore's hand stood out. After a long silence, his cold voice sounded, "I have. I regret not conducting an asset risk assessment on the Hayworth family before marrying you. Because your family suddenly went bankrupt, I thought our perfect marriage had cracks as well. That was my mistake." His words were icy and precise, each one cutting deep. My heart seemed to skip a beat. Before I could say anything, the car came to a sudden stop. Theodore didn't even look at me. "We're here. This is the place to see the peaks bathed in golden sunlight. Go see it yourself." I got out of the car in a daze and walked toward the viewing spot. Just as I stood still, a golden ray of light broke through the clouds, shining directly on the cold, pure white summit of the snowy mountain. I stared blankly. This sacred and magnificent scene would leave anyone who saw it speechless. With AWE.in such a vast world, all the things I had clung to and couldn't let go of suddenly vanished without a trace. Facing that golden light, I pressed my palms together and silently prayed in my heart, "If there is a spirit in the heavens, please let me leave smoothly." The peaks bathed in golden sunlight lasted less than 15 minutes. When I returned to the car, Theodore had already put away his phone. Back in the hotel room, after much thought, I finally sent Kendall's address to Theodore. He replied quickly, "Where is this?" "Theodore, tomorrow morning. Could you help me take the luggage I put in the trunk to this place?" "All right." He neither asked why I wanted to do this nor what it was. Theodore was always this indifferent toward things he didn't care about. I put down my phone, tugged at the corners of my lips, and didn't reply with another word. Just like that, as the moon set and the sun rose, Theodore's voice sounded outside the door. "Annalise, it's time to go." I answered, "All right," and got up to leave. 20 minutes later, Theodore parked the car steadily in front of Kendall's door. Sitting in the passenger seat, I felt dizzy, as if I didn't even have the strength to open my eyes. Vaguely, I heard Theodore's voice, "Annalise, what's wrong?" "Altitude sickness." I raised my hand toward him, my voice very low. "Don't worry about me, just give the things." There was no more sound in my ears. Worried, I forced my eyes open and saw Theodore carrying my body bag and knocking on Kendall's door. I heard their conversation. "Are you a family member of Ms. Hayworth?" "Yes." "All right, give me the items. I'll get the form for you to sign." Hearing this, the anxiety in my heart finally eased. But at that moment, I suddenly froze. In the depths of my mind, a voice echoed in my ears. "Annalise, time is up." As that voice sounded, my body began to disappear at an unimaginable speed. In my final moments, I looked out the window and silently mouthed words to the man standing there. "Theodore, farewell forever." In less than 3 seconds, my figure vanished like steam inside the car. The door, Theodore, worried about my altitude sickness, was about to turn around when Kendall called out to him, "This is the natural burial procedure form. Please sign at the bottom." Theodore's hand, which was about to take the form, froze. He thought he had misheard. "What did you say?" "Natural burial." Kendall looked at him seriously. You are Ms. Hayworth's only family member in this world. You even brought her body here. If you don't sign this procedure form, who will? Ms. Hayworth has been dead for 7 days. If you don't hurry, there will be no way to hold the ceremony." Theodore abruptly withdrew his hand, his tone cold and hard. "You're talking nonsense. What natural burial? What body? She's clearly sitting in the car just fine." After saying this, he ignored Kendall's reaction and strode toward the car parked not far away. "Annalise, explain this to me." He yanked open the car door, only to find the entire car completely empty. Theodore's fingers still rested on the car door handle, his knuckles turning white from the force. The empty passenger seat inside the car seemed to mock him in silence. The leather upholstery was flawless, without a single crease. Theodore growled, "Annalise." His hoarse voice echoed through the deserted courtyard, reverberating back to Theodore's ears and making his head spin. His fingertips trembled as he shouted loudly, "You were just in the car, Annalise. Stop hiding, come out." Theodore circled the car frantically, his gaze sweeping over every inch of the vehicle, desperately searching for any trace of Annalise. He even bent down to peer into the narrow shadow beneath the car, but found nothing except dry soil and a few withered blades of grass. But as time ticked by, Theodore stood by the car, his expression shifting from initial rage to utter confusion. He ran a hand through his hair. How could she be gone? She was just talking to me a moment ago. "Mr. Godfrey," Kendall's voice came, and he was holding the natural burial procedure sheet in his hand. Theodore snapped back to reality, rushed to Kendall, and gripped his shoulders tightly. "Are you and she putting on an act together?" Theodore's heart pounded violently. She was just sitting next to me. How could she disappear into thin air? Kendall had seen many family members unable to accept the death of a loved one. He looked at Theodore with a trace of sympathy and pity in his eyes. "Please sign as soon as possible. The body needs to be handled so I can arrange the subsequent ceremony." Theodore looked up, a hint of red in his eyes. "Tell me clearly, whose body are you talking about?" Kendall pointed to the body bag at the entrance of the courtyard, his tone calm. "Naturally, it's Ms. Hayworth. The deceased has been dead for 7 days. Wasn't it you who contacted me in advance, saying you wanted to bring her for a natural burial?" Theodore slammed his fist against the courtyard wall, bright red blood seeping from between his knuckles, but he felt no pain at all. "Nonsense. She's been with me these past few days, alive and well. I never contacted you." As he spoke, something seemed to occur to him. "Right, just now, when the peaks were bathed in golden sunlight, I took a photo of her." Theodore took out his phone from his pocket, his fingers trembling so much that he nearly dropped it several times before opening the photo album. "Look," Theodore's voice cut off abruptly. In an instant, his whole body froze, as if his blood had stopped flowing. Photo after photo slid past in the album. Each one showed golden snow, capped mountains, and an empty viewing platform, with no sign of Annalise anywhere. He clearly remembered her standing in the center of the platform, sunlight falling on her hair, gilding it with a golden edge. He had deliberately chosen the best angle and pressed the shutter. "Impossible. I definitely took her picture." He muttered to himself, his fingers flipping through the photos rapidly. How could she not be there? As he kept looking, Theodore put away his phone and murmured softly, "I must not have taken it well. The place was too far. The phone didn't capture her." "Yes, that must be it." But his lowered hand was clenched tightly into a fist, clearly betraying his inner turmoil. Uncontrollably, his mind flashed with the image of Annalise standing in the distance, bathed in the golden light of sunrise. Her expression was serene and gentle, a faint smile on her lips. Her eyes no longer held the resentment of the past, only a peace that bordered on transcendence. At that moment, he had been dazed, as if transported back to when they first met, and unconsciously pressed the camera button. Thinking of this, Theodore spoke anxiously. "We drove here ourselves, and we've been carrying this luggage the whole way. If there was a body inside, how could there be no smell at all?" Kendall bent down and sniffed closer, also a bit puzzled. "Strange, there really isn't any smell of decay." He straightened up, intending to open the bag. "We'll know once we look inside. Don't touch it." Theodore grabbed Kendall's wrist in one swift motion. He stared fixedly at the bag, his heart gripped by an invisible hand, each breath laced with pain. There can't be a body in there. A corpse wouldn't be that light. I've carried her before. She was much heavier than this. As he spoke, he became even more certain. Yes, this must be fake. Annie, she's just playing a joke, hiding somewhere. Kendall broke free from his grip, his tone more solemn. Mr. Godfrey, you may just be unable to accept it for now. Your memory is confused. I also feel sorry for the deceased, but natural burial is particular about timing. We can't delay. The dead deserve respect. Since she's been brought here, we must let her depart in peace. Theodore swayed, anger in his eyes. If you want to look, then look. There's no way Annalise is in there. With that, he reached out and yanked open the body bag. The sound of fabric scraping was especially harsh in the silent courtyard. The bag was unzipped, revealing the curled up figure inside. Theodore's gaze sharpened, his face instantly turning pale, and he called out in a trembling voice. Annalise was wearing her favorite white knitted sweater, her hair damp and clinging to her cheeks. Her face was pale and ashen, her lips darkened to a purplish hue, her fingers curled tightly, with traces of mud and sand still embedded beneath her nails. Her brows were still slightly furrowed, betraying a pain that could not be concealed. Theodore's pupils contracted sharply, and for a moment, it felt as if all the blood in his body had frozen. He opened his mouth, but his throat seemed blocked by something, and several times he failed to make a sound. A broken sob was forced from his chest, his voice hoarse. Impossible. This is fake. His fingertips trembled as he tried to touch her face, but he jerked his hand back suddenly. This must be a model she had someone make. It has to be. He spoke with finality, his tone resolute and unwavering. She's just angry with me. That's why she's trying to trick me like this. Once she calms down, everything will be fine. Beside him, Kendall pressed his hands together and began to recite a prayer for Annalise's soul in a low voice. His tone was full of compassion. Mr. Godfrey, the deceased died from drowning. The marks on her body cannot be faked. Look at her wrists. There are ligature marks. She was probably scratched by river weeds or rocks when the current swept her away. Following his gaze, Theodore saw several scratches of varying depths on Annalise's wrists, along with some bluish, purple bruises. Those marks were terrifyingly real. Nothing a model could possibly replicate. But he still refused to believe it, shaking his head frantically. No, she can't be dead. She was just talking to me. How could she possibly be dead? I received her photo and confirmed that this is indeed Miss Hayworth. I never sent it. Theodore interrupted him with a low growl, his emotions so intense he was nearly out of control. It must have been Annalise who contacted you. She just wants to scare me, to make me give in. I'll apologize to her and ask her to stop this, all right? Kendall looked at him, seeing how close he was to breaking down, and handed him a business card with a sigh. Mr. Godfrey, contact me when you are ready. If the body is left for more than 14 days, it will completely decompose, and by then, the natural burial ceremony will be very difficult to carry out. Theodore took the business card mechanically and stuffed it into his pocket. Understood. He turned around and picked up the body bag, his movements rough, but tinged with a barely noticeable panic. He was going to find Annalise, to expose this childish trick right in front of her. Kendall stood where he was, watching the car speed away, and sighed. Another poor soul. Theodore drove wildly, his mind filled with images of Annalise. The way she smiled, the way she pouted in anger, the way she cried in grievance. All these memories tangled together, making his head throb with pain. He didn't know where he was going. He only knew he had to find a place that could prove Annalise was still alive. He thought of the hotel they had stayed at 2 days ago, where they had checked in together and eaten in the restaurant. Someone there must remember her. So he turned the car around and headed toward the hotel, speeding and ignoring traffic rules, desperate to get there as quickly as possible. Late at night, the car finally stopped in front of the hotel. Theodore carried the body bag into the lobby, startling the receptionist so much that she nearly dropped her water glass. Mr. Godfrey, are you here to check in? He placed the body bag beside him, not allowing anyone to come near. The woman who came with me 2 days ago, do you remember her? Long hair, very beautiful with big eyes? Frightened by his appearance, the receptionist quickly lowered her head to check the registration records, then shook her head. Mr. Godfrey, there is only your check, in information. No one else. Impossible. Theodore braced his hands on the front desk, leaning forward. Check carefully. We checked in together. She was standing right next to me. The receptionist nervously turned the tablet around. The records on the screen were clear, only Theodore's name. Check. In time and check. Out time, all plainly visible. Mr. Godfrey, it really is just you. Surveillance. I want to check the surveillance footage. The receptionist took a step back and looked at him. Mr. Godfrey, that's against our policy. Theodore almost shouted, I've lost something very important. Bring up the surveillance footage. The receptionist, helpless, could only request approval from her superior. 3 hours later, the surveillance footage was brought up. He stared at the screen without blinking. In the footage, he walked into the hotel lobby alone, checked in alone, and dragged his suitcase into the elevator by himself. Throughout the entire process, there was no one beside Theodore. He pointed at the screen at the moment where he raised his hand and roared, Look. I'm holding her hand. She was right next to me. Your surveillance is broken. It must be broken. The receptionist stood timidly to the side and whispered, Mr. Godfrey, our surveillance is functioning normally. That sentence was like the final straw that broke Theodore's already taut nerves. He staggered a step, shaking his head repeatedly. He didn't believe it. He absolutely refused to believe it. Every moment spent with Annalise was still vividly etched in his mind. Those memories felt so real. How could they possibly be fake? He stumbled into the elevator and pressed the button for the floor where he had once stayed. Back in the room, he locked the door behind him. The room was bone, chillingly cold. He collapsed onto the floor, leaning against the icy wall, his hands digging into his hair, pulling hard. His mind replayed every detail of the journey like a movie. Right, there's also the dashcam footage. With trembling hands, he opened the dashcam playback, but all it showed was him talking to himself. Annoying, clingy, dramatic. Annalise, you've been sitting here almost all day. Why is this seat still cold? When are you planning to divorce me? His own voice echoed from the phone, reverberating again and again in the empty room. Theodore remembered clearly that Annalise's answer at the time was, after we return from Colorado. How ridiculous. The room was terrifyingly quiet, with only his heavy breathing and his own voice coming from the phone. Theodore closed his eyes, trying to hide the bloodshot veins in them. Early the next morning, Theodore wandered aimlessly through the streets of Colorado, carrying the body bag. He had no idea where he could go to find Annalise. He passed by a temple, where incense smoke curled in the air and devotees knelt in sincere prayer. A monk in robes stopped him, his gaze falling on the body. Back at Theodore's side, palms pressed together in a gesture of respect. Sir, I sense a deep obsession weighing on you. Would you pause for a moment and listen to my words? Theodore halted, his eyes empty as he looked at the monk. What do you know? His voice was hoarse. Why does no one remember my wife? Why am I the only one who can see her? The monk smiled gently, his eyes warm. Please do not be anxious. Obsession is born from the heart and trapped by emotion. You say your wife is missing. May I take a look at her? Instinctively, Theodore hid the body bag behind him and shook his head. She's gone. She's hiding. She refuses to see me. The monk's gaze remained on the body bug, his tone calm. Isn't your wife inside that bag? Theodore's expression changed dramatically. He took a sudden step back, his eyes full of wariness and anger. What nonsense are you talking about? That's just a mannequin she used to trick me. It's not her. The monk did not argue, only sighed softly. Some truths, in the end, must be faced. Your wife is indeed inside that bag. What you saw before was merely an illusion granted by heaven out of pity. Theodore opened his mouth to refute, but found himself at a loss for words. He looked down at the body bag beside him. A faint, unpleasant odor had begun to spread. the smell of a decaying corpse. It was subtle, but undeniably real. He knew the monk was right. He had just been deceiving himself all along, clinging to his last hope. He found the best forensic expert in town. Help me determine whether this is really a corpse. The forensic expert looked at the body bag, wrinkling his nose in disgust and covering it with his hand. But Theodore gave him enough money, so he reluctantly began the examination. While waiting, Theodore paced back and forth in the hallway. Every second felt as long as a century. He prayed that the forensic expert would tell him it was just a mannequin, not the real Annalise. But when the forensic expert came out holding the report, his face expressionless, he said, "The deceased is a female, approximately 28 years old. Cause of death, drowning. Estimated time of death, about 8 days ago." 8 days ago. Theodore repeated those words in a murmur, feeling as if an invisible hand was squeezing his heart so tightly he could barely breathe. 8 days ago was November 4th. It was his and Annalise's 5th wedding anniversary. That day, Theodore and Madison were together, caught by the media, and soon became a trending topic. That day, Annalise called him countless times, but he didn't answer a single one and impatiently put his phone on silent. That day, he bought a cake and waited for her to come back, but the story was twisted to say he was with someone else. It turned out that Annalise left this world on their anniversary. Theodore leaned against the wall, slowly slid to the ground, and tears poured out. Uncontrollably. He finally had to admit that Annalise was truly gone. She died in his indifference and neglect on their 5th anniversary. Choking with sobs, his voice shattered. "Annie, I'm sorry. It was my fault. I was really wrong." Theodore carried Annalise's body back to the hotel room. He no longer resisted as before, but carefully laid her on the bed. He gently wiped the dirt from her face with a clean towel, his movements as tender as if he were handling a rare treasure. He found Annalise's phone, its screen already dark, so he plugged in a charger and waited for it to turn on. The moment the phone lit up, his heart skipped a beat. The unlock code was their anniversary, 11:04. All thought she would have changed it long ago, but she never did. On the phone, their chat history was still there, from when they first got together to when they gradually drifted apart. The earliest messages were from their university days, when they would send hundreds of messages a day, sharing every little thing. "Theo, the sweet and sour ribs in the cafeteria were amazing today. I saved you a portion. Theo, it just rained and I didn't bring an umbrella. Can you come pick me up? Theo, I just saw an adorable puppy. It's as cute as you." Back then, he always replied instantly, his tone full of affection, but later, their conversations grew shorter, his replies slower, and often he didn't reply at all. "Theo, Mom asked when we're planning to have kids." No reply. "Theo, there's a problem with the Hayworth group. Can you help me?" No reply. "Theo, Summer is missing." He replied, "Annalise, can't you stop bothering me?" Looking at these chat logs, Theodore felt as if his heart was being cut over and over with a blunt knife. The pain suffocating. He murmured to himself, "What have I done?" He opened his WhatsApp favorites, which were filled with all the love words Annalise had saved from him, one after another, neatly arranged. "Annie, once I graduate, I'll marry you and make you the happiest woman in the world. Annie, I'll only ever love you in this life, year after year, never changing my heart. Annie, don't be afraid. As long as I'm here, I'll carry the weight of the world for you." Looking at these once heartfelt vows, Theodore's tears fell again. At the end of the favorites list were a few lines Annalise had written herself. "I really like you. I'm just upset that you never tried to comfort me. That lost gift, I searched the lake all night to find it, but you never asked about it again. When the Hayworth family went bankrupt, I waited for you every day, waited for you to come back and tell me you'd stay with me, but you never did. Theodore, it seems like I can't wait for you anymore." The time of the last message was exactly when she first mentioned divorce. Theodore gripped the phone, his fingers trembling so much he could barely hold on. He kept scrolling and unexpectedly found Annalise's chat history with Kendall. The very first message was, "I'd like to schedule a natural burial ceremony 4 days from now." Kendall asked about her identity, and she replied, "I'm the enemy of the deceased." A second later, she added, "Just kidding, I'm her husband, but I don't love her." Reading this, Theodore felt as if a knife was twisting in his heart. She loved him so much, yet he hurt her so deeply. Just then, the phone vibrated. It was a message from Madison. "Theo, when are you coming back to watch the musical with me? I've already bought the tickets." Theodore looked at the message, his eyes completely lifeless. He replied with 3 words, "I'm not coming." Not long after, Madison called directly, her tone tinged with concern. "Theo, what's wrong? Did something happen? Is Annie throwing a tantrum again? You still love her, so stop lying to her." Madison's voice carried a hint of helplessness. "As long as you explain things to her, she'll understand what happened back then." Theodore closed his eyes, his voice hoarse as if it came from the depths of hell. "She'll never forgive me." "How could that be?" Madison said, "You just need to tell her clearly that you didn't avoid her on purpose back then. That your father locked you up and you had no choice. She loves you so much, she'll definitely forgive you." Theodore was silent for a long time before he finally spoke. "She can't hear me anymore." Madison was stunned on the other end of the phone. After a long while, she cautiously asked, "Theo, what do you mean by that?" "Annalise is dead." Theodore's voice was eerily calm. "She died on our 5th wedding anniversary." A long silence fell on the other end of the line, with only Madison's breathing audible. After a long time, she finally whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't expect this to happen." Theodore said nothing more and hung up the phone. He placed his phone on the bedside table, gently held Annalise's cold hand, and murmured, "Annie, don't worry. I will fulfill your wish and take you to Montview Garden Columbarium so you can rest in the place closest to heaven." Theodore stayed in the hotel room for an entire day. It wasn't until evening that he finally got up, deciding to go out for a walk. When he walked into the hotel lobby, he unexpectedly saw that familiar group of Northwestern University students. They were gathered together, sorting through photos, their faces bright with youthful smiles. Theodore paused for a moment, then hurried over, his voice urgent. "Excuse me, do you remember me?" The group of students turned around and, upon seeing him, gave polite smiles. "Hello, Mr. Godfrey, we remember you." Theodore's eyes lit up. "Didn't you take photos of me and my wife that day? Could you show them to me?" He was desperate to see a photo with Annalise in it, wanting proof that she had truly existed, but the students looked stunned, exchanging glances. One of the boys asked in confusion, "Mr. Godfrey, we only took photos of you alone. There was no one else." "Impossible." Theodore's voice instantly rose. "Weren't you taking photos of 100 couples for project? You approached us yourselves. My wife was standing right next to me at the time. How could you have only photographed me?" The boy quickly explained, "Mr. Godfrey, maybe you remember it wrong. We did have a project to photograph 100 couples, but when we met you that day, you were alone. We didn't see your wife." As he spoke, he took out his camera, scrolled through the developed film, and handed it to Theodore. "See, it's really just you." Theodore took the camera, his fingers trembling as he swiped through the screen. In the photo, there was a faint, almost imperceptible smile at the corner of his mouth, but his right hand was suspended in the air, as if holding someone's hand. But in the photo, aside from him, there was no one else. "Look, there should be someone here." Theodore pointed at his outstretched hand. "She was right here. How can you not see her?" The students were startled by his reaction, taking a step back, troubled expressions on their faces. The boy said softly, "Mr. Godfrey, there really is only you in the photo. We're not lying to you." Theodore staggered back a step, covering his face with both hands, his shoulders shaking violently. He remembered clearly that Annalise had been standing right beside him that day, even smiling at the students and saying, "It's fine. We had an amicable divorce. Go ahead and take the photo." But why did no one remember her? Why wasn't she in any of the photos? His expression was filled with pain and confusion. Suddenly, he thought of Cohen. Maybe Cohen would remember Annalise. So he took out his phone and dialed Cohen's number. As soon as the call connected, he couldn't wait to ask, "Cohen, tell me, When I came back that day, did Annalise come back too? Cohen was momentarily taken aback on the other end, then replied in confusion, Mr. Godfrey, you came back alone that day. I didn't see Mrs. Godfrey. Theodore was stunned. He hung up and immediately dialed Ronald's number. When the call connected, Ronald's voice was trembling with a hint of flattery. Mr. Godfrey, is there something you need? Theodore's voice was urgent. Ronald, tell me, why did I deduct your bonus last time? Ronald quickly replied, Mr. Godfrey, it was because I ordered the wrong cake for you and Miss Pavley. You wanted a mango cake, but the bakery made a strawberry one instead. Strawberry cake. Theodore was stunned. He remembered that Annalise hated strawberries, but that day, when he fed her cake, she hadn't said a word. She just swallowed it quietly after hanging up. Theodore felt completely lost. He couldn't understand why everything was different from how he remembered it. Why was everyone telling him that Annalise never came back? Could it all really be his imagination? He wandered into the hotel restaurant in a daze and ordered the same dishes he had shared with Annalise that day. When the food arrived, he noticed that one of the dishes contained peanuts, and he was instantly stunned. He remembered that Annalise was allergic to peanuts, yet that day she had eaten all the peanuts in the dish. He called the waiter over, pointed at the peanuts in the dish, and asked in a hoarse voice, has this dish always contained peanuts? The waiter nodded and answered confidently, yes, Mr. Godfrey, peanuts have always been an ingredient in this dish. It's one of our specialties. Theodore was stunned, and the fork in his hand fell to the floor with a clatter. So, she had already died that day, lost her sense of taste, and that's why she had no reaction to her allergy. Just then, his phone rang. It was Cohen calling. He answered, his face weary. Cohen, what is it now? Cohen's voice carried a hint of excitement. Do you remember what you asked me to do before? I found your wedding video. Theodore took a deep breath, his voice trembling slightly. All right, send it to my phone. He gripped his phone tightly, his fingers clenched so hard that his knuckles turned white. On the screen, Cohen was slowly sending over the wedding video, the progress bar inching forward. Catch second feeling like an eternity. He returned to his room, connected his phone to the television, and then sat quietly on the sofa, waiting. The TV screen lit up, and a familiar melody played, instantly pulling him back to the wedding scene from 5 years ago. Let us welcome the bride and groom. The wedding decorations were lavish and romantic, with red roses and white lilies intertwined, covering the entire hall. The camera shifted, focusing on the end of the red carpet, where Annalise, dressed in a pure white wedding gown, walked slowly forward. Holding onto a family member's arm. A gentle smile graced her face, her eyes bright and clear, the corners of her mouth lifted, looking both happy and bashful. Theodore gazed at Annalise on the screen, his eyes unfocused. He hadn't seen her like this in a long time. The Annalise in his memory was always resentful and cold, never showing him a kind face. Her words always laced with barbs. He had almost forgotten that Annalise had once been so gentle, so wonderful. The camera turned to him. Back then, he wore a crisp black suit, standing tall, unable to suppress the smile on his face. He looked at Annalise, his eyes filled with affection and love, as if she was his entire world. When Annalise reached him, he reached out and held her hand tightly. His voice choked as he said, Annie, I've waited so long for this day. Annalise looked up at him, tears shimmering in her eyes, and nodded. Theo, me too. Next came the exchange of rings. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then lowered his head and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Annalise, whether in wealth or poverty, in health or sickness, I will always love you, and never leave you. She put the ring on his finger as well, her voice gentle yet firm. Theodore, I am willing to marry you. Whether in wealth or poverty, in health or sickness, I will always love you, stay by your side, and never leave you. Watching the scene, Theodore couldn't hold back his tears. Those vows were so beautiful, yet in the end, they couldn't keep them. He took out his phone and scrolled through the old photos stored in his album. It was Annalise who had taught him how to take pictures. She always said, Theodore, Why do you always make me look so bad in photos? But he never thought so. Every photo of Annalise was taken with love, capturing the happy moments they once shared. But later, everything changed. The Hayworth family went bankrupt, and his father, Nolan Godfrey, locked him up, leaving him unable to contact her for 3 months. By the time he was finally able to get out, she had already become cold and distant. He didn't know how to explain, so he could only arm himself with avoidance and indifference, even deliberately getting close to Madison, hoping to provoke her, to make her care about him. But he hadn't expected that his actions would only push her further away. The wedding on the TV continued, with Annalise and him cutting the cake together, serving tea and receiving blessings from the guests. Her smile never faded. So happy. So radiant. May Theo and I be together forever. Theodore turned off the TV, and the room was instantly plunged into darkness. He leaned back on the sofa, closed his eyes, and his mind was filled with images of Annalise, her gentle self at the wedding, her playful self in college, her stubborn self during arguments. Annalise. He murmured to himself, his voice filled with endless regret and pain. Why didn't you wait for me? I didn't get the chance to explain to you. Didn't get the chance to say I'm sorry. Didn't get the chance to tell you that I never stopped loving you. Tears slid down silently, soaking his collar. He knew it was all too late. The girl he had sworn to protect for a lifetime had died in his indifference. Theodore sat in the darkness all night, and it was only when dawn broke that he slowly opened his eyes. The confusion and pain in his eyes gradually faded, replaced by a calm despair. He finally accepted the truth. Annalise was truly gone. Never to return. He stood up, straightened his clothes, and then carefully placed Annalise's body into the body bag, carrying the body bag. He left the hotel room and drove toward Montview Garden Columbarium. He was determined to fulfill her last wish, to take her to Montview Garden Columbarium and let her rest in the place closest to heaven. When Theodore saw Kendall again, there was only a numb calmness on his face. He placed the body bag on the ground and bowed slightly to Kendall. Mr. Wright, please, could you conduct the natural burial ceremony? Kendall looked at him and nodded. All right, I'll make the arrangements right away. Montview Garden Columbarium was built halfway up the mountain, surrounded by colorful flags that fluttered and rustled in the wind. Theodore stood at the edge of Montview Garden Columbarium, watching as Annalise's body was carried onto the platform. A sharp pain piercing his heart. He turned to Kendall and asked in a low voice, Mr. Wright, do you really believe there is a heaven? Kendall pressed his palms together, his gaze devout. Yes, those with kind hearts, their souls return to the Pure Land, and all can enter heaven. Theodore nodded, his eyes returning to Montview Garden Columbarium. Soon, a flock of vultures circled down, landing on Montview Garden Columbarium and beginning to peck at the body. Theodore did not look away. He simply watched in silence, his eyes filled with regret and reluctance. Annie. His voice was carried away by the wind. There is no pain in heaven, no betrayal, and no bastard like me. He remembered the documentary they once watched together, which said that natural burial allowed the soul to return to the sacred place closest to heaven. He thought that Annalise's soul would surely fly to heaven, where she would find the happiness and peace she longed for. After the natural burial ceremony ended, Theodore did not return immediately. He stayed in Colorado for a few more days. He went to Lake Hiaha, where the water was deep blue and crystal clear. Annalise once said it was a place of pilgrimage. He visited the Denver Botanic Gardens, where wildflowers bloomed everywhere. Annalise once said she wanted to take a series of photos there. He went to the Colorado State Capitol, where the architecture was solemn and sacred. Annalise once said she wanted to pray for their future there. Every place he visited, he took photos and saved them on his phone, as if he were fulfilling Annalise's unfinished wishes for her. A few days later, Theodore finally set out on the journey home. The car drove into the familiar city, along familiar streets, and finally arrived at his familiar home, yet his heart felt empty and hollow. Hearing the sound, Cohen hurried out to greet him, a smile on his face. Mr. Godfrey, you're back. Mr. Godfrey, Hasn't Mrs. Godfrey been with you these past few days? Theodore paused, his face expressionless, his voice calm. She's dead. Cohen froze, disbelief written all over his face. He stammered, Mr. Godfrey, what did you say? Theodore did not answer and simply walked straight into the house. In the living room, their wedding photo was still on display. In the picture, Annalise wore a pure white wedding dress and smiled radiantly. He stood motionless in front of the photo. Scenes from the day it was taken replaying in his mind. The sea breeze was strong that day, blowing Annalise's hair loose. Suddenly, she broke free from his hand and ran to the shore where the waves crashed, shouting to him into the salty wind. Theodore, I finally married you. Back then, Theodore stood still, watching her surrounded by the waves, feeling as if the whole world had brightened. But now, the smile in the photo was still radiant, yet the person who used to call his name would never answer him again. Theodore pushed open the carved wooden door on the second floor, and the sensor light flickered on. The house was eerily quiet. Cohen followed behind, hesitating to speak as he watched Theodore walk straight toward the second floor. That was Annalise's bedroom. Theodore did not look back. He simply pushed the bedroom door open gently. Ever since he and Annalise started sleeping in separate rooms, he had never come in here again. He looked around carefully. The furnishings inside were exactly as he remembered Annalise liked. Ivory bed sheets, a ceramic cup on the nightstand. He walked to the wardrobe and opened the door. Unlike the luxurious closet at the Hayworth's villa, there were only a few scattered dresses inside. His fingertips brushed over them, and a wave of bitterness surged up instantly. It was me who kept neglecting you. A leather-bound notebook lay open on the desk, filled with Annalise's handwriting. Delicate, yet a bit messy. He picked up the notebook and flipped through it page by page, reading her innermost thoughts. I clearly asked for a mango cake, but got a strawberry one instead. So annoying, he didn't take my words seriously. The family company is getting worse and worse. I call Theo every day, but he never answers. They say the Godfrey family won't help us, but I don't believe it. Theo loves me so much. He will definitely come to help me. Summer is missing, but Theo doesn't care at all. He never used to be like this. The tide at Puget Sound is really high. The TV says today is the highest tide of the year. I want to go see it. The date on the last page was exactly their 5th anniversary. Theodore wondered, what was he doing that day? He was with Madison, and even hung up on Annalise's call. There was a rosewood box on the desk. When he opened it, there was a ring inside. It was the first gift he ever gave her. Back then, he said, Annie, when I graduate, I'll marry you and buy you the most beautiful ring in the world. Later, he bought her diamonds, jade, and rubies, but she always wore this ring on her finger. His phone vibrated in his pocket. It was a message from his good friend Austin Miller. Ms. Pavley told us everything. We know you're having the hardest time. Come out tonight. Let us keep you company and have a drink. Theodore hesitated for a moment and replied, okay. In the evening, he arrived at the reserved private room. Several people were already there, including Madison. As soon as he walked in, the previously lively room fell silent. Austin stood up to offer him a seat and handed him a glass of wine. My condolences. Theodore took the glass, but didn't drink, just set it on the table. What a pity, Austin sighed. You and she used to be our model couple. Who would have thought? You've had so many scandals these past few years. I thought you didn't like her anymore. I never stopped liking her. Theodore abruptly cut him off. I never stopped liking her. I love her. Everyone was stunned. They hadn't expected such a strong reaction from him. Madison gently patted his shoulder and said softly, Theo, no one means any harm. We just don't know the truth. Theodore gave a bitter laugh, his eyes reddening. The truth is, I'm a fool. I hurt the person I loved most in the stupidest way. He remembered those 3 months locked up in the old house, when he thought about running away countless times, wanting to find her, but every time, the bodyguards stopped him. Still, he refused to give up. He would rather be locked up than let her go, but by the time he finally escaped, everything had changed. The Hayworth family went bankrupt. Her father died from the shock. and she became silent and distant. He picked up the glass and drained it in one gulp. The burning liquid scorched his throat, but it couldn't numb the pain in his heart. Back then, I was locked in the old house for 3 months, cut off from all contact with the outside world. My father said that as long as I divorced Annalise, he would help the Hayworth family through their difficulties. But I refused, and that's what led to the Hayworth family's bankruptcy, her father's death. She has every right to hate me. It was my cowardice that caused everything that happened now. I deliberately got close to Maddie just to provoke her, to make her care about me. His voice grew more and more hoarse. I was going to confess everything to her, but it was all too late. The private room was enveloped in silence as Theodore drank one glass after another. The people around him watched in silence. No one tried to stop him. When Theodore stood up, steadying himself against the wall, his steps were unsteady. Austen reached out to support him, but Theodore gently avoided his hand. "I'm fine." Everyone watched his lonely figure disappear at the doorway of the private room. They exchanged glances, and in the end, all that remained was a heavy sigh. The Theodore who used to be spirited and always the center of attention at gatherings was now left with nothing but exhaustion and regret. The car drove smoothly through the streets in the early morning. Theodore leaned against the passenger seat, gazing at the streetlights flashing by outside the window. The warm yellow halos blurred in his eyes, clouding his vision and bringing back memories of those university nights back then. He would walk Annalise back to her dormitory. She would wrap her arms around his waist and whisper, "Theo, one day I want to see every corner of the world." He would smile and promise her that he would take her to see the farthest landscapes. But now the scenery remained, yet the person beside him was gone. When he returned home, Cohen walked out from the kitchen, holding a steaming bowl of hangover cure. "Mr. Godfrey, you're back. This is hangover cure. It will help you feel better." Theodore took the bowl, sat at the dining table, and drank the soup spoonful by spoonful. Suddenly, he spoke. "Annie used to make this for me all the time." Cohen's eyes instantly turned red. He had worked at the Godfrey Villa for 50 years, watching Theodore grow steadier with each step, and witnessing him and Annalise go from young campus sweethearts to a married couple. Mrs. Godfrey was always so thoughtful. She knew your stomach wasn't good, so every time you came home after a social event, she would have hangover cure ready in advance. There was one time you drank until 3 in the morning. She waited for you in the living room until 3. The soup cooled and was reheated, then cooled again, and she reheated it 3 times in total. Cohen's voice was choked with emotion. "How did things end up like this between you two?" Theodore's grip on the bowl suddenly tightened. The scalding soup splashed onto the back of his hand, and a dense pain spread through his heart. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was a call from Austen. Theodore took a deep breath and pressed the answer button. "Theo." Austen's voice was cautious and tentative. "A few of us discussed it, and we want to hold a memorial for Annie. She was our friend too. Everyone wants to say a final goodbye to her." Theodore's heart clenched sharply. The word memorial was like a blunt knife, once again cutting open the wound that had just begun to heal. He was silent for a full half-minute before he heard his own hoarse voice. "All right, thank you all." He had never thought about holding a memorial for Annalise, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't dare. He was afraid to face those familiar faces, and even more afraid to admit that the person he loved so deeply was truly gone forever. The memorial, let's hold it by the sunflower fields on the outskirts of the city. She loved sunflowers the most. The first time Annalise took him to see sunflowers, she said, "Theo, look at them. They're wonderful. They always face the sun and never bow their heads." Back then, she said, "I want to be like a sunflower too, always facing you, my son." But in the end, he became the dark cloud that blocked her light. After hanging up on Austen, Theodore stayed awake the entire night. The morning sunlight poured in, forcing Theodore to open his eyes. Cohen brought over a stack of photographs. "Mr. Godfrey, I found these while organizing things." Each photograph was one he had taken of Annalise. There was one of her smiling radiantly under the camphor tree on their university campus. There was one of her in the library. dozing off with her head on the table after being lulled to sleep by her book. There was one of her leaning on his shoulder, eyes closed, with a peaceful smile on the back of each photo. There was a date and a small note, a bit blurry, but I really like it. Theo's photography skills are getting better and better. I want him to take pictures of me for a lifetime. Looking at these photos, Theodore felt as if his heart was being cut again and again by a blunt knife, the pain making it hard to breathe. I broke my promise. The memorial service was scheduled for 3 days later. On that day, the sun was shining brightly, and the venue was filled with sunflowers. Austin and a few friends arrived early. Many of Annalise's friends were there as well, holding fresh flowers in their hands, sadness written on their faces. Annie, may you find happiness for a lifetime in your next life. Theodore stood at the entrance in a black suit, greeting each person who came to pay their respects. Madison also came, holding a bouquet of white daisies. Theo, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have gone along with you to upset her. Theodore was silent for a moment. It has nothing to do with you. I was just too foolish. By the time the memorial ended, it was nearly dusk. The guests gradually departed. Austin patted Theodore on the shoulder. If you need anything, just call us anytime. Theodore nodded in gratitude, his gaze lingering on the sunflowers for a long time. Returning to the empty living room, Theodore's eyes were vacant as he took out the notebook he had never finished reading. I went to the hospital for a checkup today. The doctor said I'm pregnant. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't reach you on the phone. I waited for 3 hours downstairs at your company and saw you come out with Ms. Pavley. She smiled and took your arm, and you didn't push her away. Reading this, Theodore felt as if a giant hand was squeezing his heart, the pain making him curl up. He remembered now. That day, Madison was just there by coincidence. He had pushed her hand away, but Annalise had misunderstood. Cohen's voice was choked with emotion. When Mrs. Godfrey had a miscarriage back then, she went to the hospital alone. I only heard about it later from a hospital attendant. After the miscarriage, she hemorrhaged badly and almost didn't make it. The attendant said the first thing she asked when she woke up was whether Mr. Godfrey had come. When she heard he hadn't, she started to cry. Theodore's hands trembled as he continued reading. I went for a prenatal checkup today. The doctor said the baby is very healthy. My stomach hurts a little. I went to the hospital for a checkup, and the doctor said I need bed rest. Theo, I'm so scared. Can you please come back soon? Theodore hugged the notebook, his body sliding down the wall to the floor. He thought of the way he had treated her. He had never accompanied her even once. When she wanted to talk to him, he slammed the door and left, saying, "Don't bother me with these things." He even remembered that on the day she miscarried, he took Madison to a fancy restaurant, got photographed by paparazzi, and ended up on the trending topic, "I'm sorry, Annie." He apologized over and over, his heart feeling as if it were being torn apart, the pain making it impossible to breathe. Just then, his phone rang. It was Trip Carter, Nolan's assistant, calling. "Mr. Godfrey, Sir Godfrey had a sudden cerebral hemorrhage abroad. He's in the hospital now, in critical condition. Please come as soon as possible." Theodore stared at the phone screen, his eyes emptied. He thought of what Nolan had done all those years ago, thought of Annalise and the unborn child, and felt nothing but endless coldness inside. Trip called again, urging him to get to the airport as soon as possible. Theodore stood up. He needed to ask Nolan the truth, whether he had been involved in the Hayworth family's bankruptcy all those years ago. Just thinking about that possibility made Theodore's heart sink to the bottom. "Father, even if it really was you, I will still seek justice for Annie." He locked Annalise's notebook and the prenatal checkup records inside the study's safe. The password for the safe was their anniversary, 1104. He looked at the numbers on the safe and whispered, "Annie, once I finish dealing with all this, I'll come to be with you." But deep down, he knew some regrets, once made, can never be mended. In London.at, the entrance of the hospital's VIP ward, Tripp's expression was grave. "Mr. Godfrey, the doctor said Sir Godfrey's condition is not optimistic." Theodore did not respond. The room was filled with the strong scent of disinfectant, mingled with a faint trace of cigar smoke. Nolan lay on the hospital bed, his hair all gone, an oxygen tube inserted in his nostrils, while the monitor beeped rhythmically. Theodore pulled a chair over and sat by the bed, quietly watching. "You came?" Nolan suddenly opened his eyes, his voice hoarse. He did not look at Theodore. His gaze was fixed on the chandelier on the ceiling. "You investigated the Hayworth family." Theodore took out the information he had Ronald look into and gently placed it on the bedside table. "Why did you target the Hayworth family?" Nolan's body tensed abruptly, and the sound of the monitor instantly became sharp. A nurse hurried in to check, and only after the equipment stabilized did she warn, "The patient needs rest and must not get agitated." Theodore waited until the nurse left before continuing. "Why? What is so wrong with Annie that you can't accept her?" Nolan suddenly raised his voice. "I am not wrong. She is simply not worthy of you. She is spoiled by her family, and keeping her by your side will only ruin your future." Theodore laughed, but his laughter was full of sorrow. "So you suppressed the Hayworth family, locked me up in the old house, intercepted all news about Annie, and wouldn't let me see her." Theodore slapped a document onto the bedside table, showing that the Godfrey Group had acquired the Hayworth Group after its bankruptcy. "The shares you acquired, I will set up a charity fund named after Annie." "You can't do this." Nolan struggled to sit up, but Theodore pressed down on his shoulder. His gaze was icy. "What I am doing now is only repaying what you owe the Hayworth family." He paused, his voice softening. "You said I would regret marrying Annalise, but what I regret most is having you as my father." Nolan's lips trembled. "I just didn't want you to repeat my mistakes." His voice choked. "I thought that if I separated you from her, you could focus on your career, and the Godfrey Group would remain stable." Theodore stood up and looked at him. "You never once asked me what I wanted. Being with Annie, I could give up everything. All of this was destroyed by you." At that moment, the door to the ward was pushed open. A nurse hurried over and said, "Mr. Godfrey, the patient's blood pressure has suddenly dropped. The situation is critical and a family member's signature is needed." Theodore walked to the bedside. Nolan's eyes were already half open, half closed. He looked at Nolan's weak face. Nolan's head tilted to the side, and the monitor emitted a piercing, continuous beep. Doctors and nurses immediately began resuscitation, but in the end, they could only shake their heads. Theodore watched as Nolan was covered with a white sheet. He calmly handled Nolan's funeral affairs and boarded a plane back home. When the plane landed at the domestic airport, dawn was just breaking. Theodore went to Annalise's grave, which was a cenotaph made from her personal belongings. On the tombstone, her photo showed a bright and radiant smile, and beside it was engraved, "Theodore's wife." He put down the bouquet in his hand, sat in front of the tombstone, and softly said, "Annie, I came to see you." He began to tell her their past stories, from the first time they met, to their first time holding hands, their first embrace, their first quarrel, and their first reconciliation. He spoke in great detail, as if recalling a long movie. "The first time we met, the moment I saw you, my heart started racing. I remember the first time we held hands, I was so nervous that my palms were sweating." As he spoke, tears began to fall uncontrollably. "Annie, I shouldn't have neglected you, shouldn't have run away, shouldn't have hurt you with my indifference. But time could never go back." He sat in front of the tombstone until night fell, then slowly stood up and left. As he left, he placed his ring on the tombstone. "Annie, if you are willing in the next life, I will love you well for sure." Theodore returned home and locked himself in the study. He took out Annalise's notebook and continued to flip through it. There were fewer and fewer entries. The handwriting grew increasingly messy, and on the last few pages, there were even traces of tears that had not yet dried. He saw a page that read, "Today is Theo's birthday. I bought him a cake, his favorite one. I waited for him in the living room all night. The cake got cold, but he still didn't come home. I sent him so many messages, but he didn't reply to any of them." On another page, it said, "Theo called me today. He said he was very busy and told me not to bother him. I know he doesn't love me anymore. I'm so sad." Reading these words, Theodore felt as if his heart was being torn apart. Wait for me a little longer. Annie, the top floor president's office at the headquarters of the Godfrey Group. Theodore pushed open the window. Taking in the bustling city traffic below, Ronald knocked and entered, handing over a thick stack of documents. Mr. Godfrey, these are the urgent matters that have piled up during your absence, as well as the liquidation report for the Hayworth Group's remaining assets. Theodore took the documents, his gaze landing on the Hayworth Group's asset liquidation page. His Adam's apple bobbed, then he gave a deep, steady order: notify all department heads. There will be an emergency meeting in half an hour. In the meeting room, the executives wore various expressions. Since Theodore had been absent from work for several days, anxiety had already spread throughout the group. When he entered, everyone instinctively straightened up in their seats. Theodore walked to the head of the table, sat down, tossed the documents onto the table, and pointed at the Hayworth Group asset file. Establish an independent subsidiary and keep the Hayworth Group name. The executives exchanged glances. Someone couldn't help but speak up. Mr. Godfrey, if we do this, it will. Theodore cut him off, his gaze icy. That's an order. In addition, set up a charity foundation named after Annie, with an initial investment of $200 million, focusing on supporting education in impoverished areas. His tone left no room for negotiation. The executives dared not object and quickly lowered their heads to take notes. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Theodore methodically assigned all tasks, from market expansion to internal reforms. In the days that followed, Theodore threw himself completely into his work. He was the first to arrive at the company every day and the last to leave. The lights in his office often stayed on until late at night. Some business partners privately discussed, why is Theodore working so hard these days? When these words reached Theodore, he only smiled faintly. Only he knew that he was working so desperately to fill the emptiness in his heart. When busyness occupied all his time, he wouldn't be overwhelmed by regret in the middle of the night when he woke up. That night, he worked overtime until the early morning. As he left the office building, he found Cohen waiting at the entrance. The old man was holding a thermal container. When he saw Theodore come out, he hurried over. Mr. Godfrey, I made you some soup. Please have some to warm your stomach. Theodore took the thermal container. As his fingertips touched the warm surface, a trace of warmth rose in his heart. As he lowered his head to drink the soup, Cohen said softly, Your stomach isn't good. Mrs. Godfrey used to remind us to look after you. Theodore paused for a moment. After finishing the soup, he handed the container back to Cohen, his voice low. Cohen, you don't need to come here on purpose anymore. I'll just eat at the company. He looked up at the night sky. The moon was bright, just the way she used to like it. He said softly, Annie, I will make the Godfrey Group strong, and I will support the Hayworth Group as well. You can rest assured. On the day the first project of the Annie Foundation was launched, Theodore went to the site in person. Theodore's car stopped in front of the book house, where the steel framework of the expansion site loomed faintly in the mist. The person in charge hurried over and handed him a list of materials. Mr. Godfrey, everything has been installed. Please sign to confirm. He held the list and carefully checked the number of picture books. One by one. In the corner of the book house, sunflower seedlings were piled up, tended with great care. Theodore's gaze fell on the open ground. His Adam's apple bobbed as he spoke in a hoarse voice. If there's anything else you need, just let me know. I'll have the materials delivered. Standing by the floor to ceiling window of the book house, Theodore watched the children chattering around a model ship, a long, lost warmth rising in his eyes. Uncle Theodore. A little girl with pigtails ran over holding a painting, her face smudged with paint. Look, I painted the sea. On the drawing paper, a small dolphin floated in blue waves. A woman in a white dress held a child's hand, and a golden sun shone in the background. Theodore crouched down, his fingertips gently brushing over the woman in the painting. If you were still here, you would look just like this. He folded the painting. May I have this? The little girl nodded. Of course you can. As the sun set and the children left, Theodore took out his wedding photo. In the photo, she smiled with curved eyes. He caressed her image on the photo and whispered, "Annie, I'm almost done fulfilling our promise." At that moment, his phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message from Cohen. "Mr. Godfrey, we've found Summer." A kind person took it in, and now we've bought it back. Would you like to see it? Summer, the golden retriever they had raised together, which had gone missing by accident. In the car, Annalise had said, "If you ask when I truly gave up on you, it was that day, that moment." Theodore's heart skipped a beat. His fingertips trembled as he replied, "I'll be right back." Summer had returned, but she was gone. Theodore gripped his phone tightly. Perhaps Summer's return was a small comfort granted by fate. It allowed him to hold on to a trace of her existence. Theodore received a recent photo of Summer from Cohen. The golden retriever's fur was still fluffy, and it was lying in the yard, basking in the sun. His fingertips stroked the screen, his throat tightening. When Summer went missing, Annalise had cried and asked him for help, but he had shouted at her, "Annalise, can't you stop?" Theodore put away his phone and drove home. As soon as the car stopped, a golden retriever ran over, circling his car twice and letting out low whimpers. It was Summer. Theodore opened the car door, and Summer immediately leaped onto him, placing its paws on his shoulders and rubbing its head against his face again and again. Its eyes were full of affection, as if all those years of separation had never happened. Summer. Theodore crouched down and hugged its furry body, his voice hoarse. In a daze, he remembered years ago, Annalise holding Summer and sitting in the yard under the sun. She had smiled at him and said, "Theo, when we have a child in the future, let's have Summer grow up with them, okay?" Back then, he had agreed with a smile. But now, the child was gone. She was gone, and only Summer remained. He settled Summer in its old room and took out the toy ball Annalise had bought for it years ago. Summer carried the ball to the edge of the flower field, put it down, and barked at him repeatedly, its voice full of grievance. Theodore knew it was looking for Annalise. Theodore walked Summer slowly around the garden. From time to time, Summer stopped and barked twice. Theodore paused and said softly, "Annie, Summer is back." In the days that followed, Theodore gradually handed over his company affairs and entrusted the Annie Foundation to Madison. Madison flipped through the documents and looked up at him. "What are you going to do?" Theodore's eyes were gentle yet resolute. "I'm going to fulfill our promise." He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He simply took a photo of Annalise and set out on his journey alone. Madison managed the Annie Foundation for him, often sending him updates about the foundation, telling him how many people they had helped. His first stop was Paris. In the early morning, the Eiffel Tower loomed faintly in the mist. He found a window seat in a cafe and ordered her favorite cappuccino. He took out his camera and pressed the shutter toward the Eiffel Tower. In the lens, the tower glowed golden in the morning sun. "Annie, we've arrived in Paris. The tower here is truly beautiful, just like you said." He walked along the Seine, and when he saw a young couple kissing on the bridge, he stopped. "We should have been like them." He thought that if it weren't for the misunderstandings that had come between them, they could have always been this happy. His second stop was Egypt. Looking at the pyramids, he took a photo and softly said, "Annie, we've arrived in Egypt. The pyramids are truly magnificent. Tell me, how did people in ancient times build such great structures?" He seemed to hear her voice by his ear, saying, "I don't know, maybe because they had faith." His third stop was Antarctica. He saw adorable penguins, took a photo, and choked up as he said, "Annie, we've arrived in Antarctica. The penguins are so cute. Look, they're in pairs, so happy together." He crouched in the snow and drew a big heart with his finger. In the center of the heart were the initials of his and her names. In the years that followed, he traveled to many more places. He went to Japan to see the cherry blossoms, to Iceland to watch the aurora, and to Kenya to witness the wildebeest migration. Just like that, alone and carrying his longing for her, he visited all the places they had once promised to go together. Everywhere he went, he would take a photo for her and tell her in his heart that he had come, bringing her along. Madison often sent him messages, updating him on the foundation's progress. She said the foundation was growing larger and helping more and more people. She also said that Summer had been brought to the reading room and played with the children every day. When Theodore read the messages, he smiled, but soon his eyes grew wet. Many years later, Theodore grew old. His hair turned white, and his face was covered with wrinkles. He returned to that city, to Annalise's grave. The gravestone was clean and tidy, clearly tended to often. Holding a bouquet of sunflowers, he stood before the gravestone and softly said, "Annie, I've come to see you. I visited all the places we promised to go together. They were beautiful, just as you said. I also helped many people and established a foundation. I think you must be very happy about that." As the sun set, golden light spilled over the gravestone and over them. Theodore leaned against the gravestone, closed his eyes, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. The wind blew, carrying the fragrance of gardenias. As if Annalise were gently kissing his forehead, "Annie, I will come to be with you very soon." He whispered, "In our next life, we will be together for real and never part again." In this life, he owed her too much. In the next life, he would love her well and never let her down again. The end. Tell your experience in the comment section. Also, you can request stories. Make sure to like and subscribe Bunny Bookery Tales to get latest updates.